Hello, Tim here, and in this video I'm going to take you on a journey to Bergerac, quite a beautiful old town in the Dordogne region of southwest France. We're going to be painting another nighttime scene of one of its charming little squares surrounded by those classic half-timbered buildings and softly glowing street lamps. If you've ever wandered through a French town after dark, you'll know just how magical these places can feel. And that's exactly what I want to try and capture in this painting. Now, painting night scenes in watercolor, it's quite a challenge. And I know many of you find this idea a bit daunting. Unlike oil painting or acrylics, where you can easily add light on top of dark, watercolor is transparent, not so easy. That means that we've got to plan carefully, really, painting the lightest areas first, well, leaving out those light areas of the paper, painting the light areas, and then building up those colors as we go along. It's a bit like working backwards, certainly for an oil painter or acrylic painter, and it can feel a little bit sort of unnatural to beginners. One of the biggest hurdles is going in dark enough, because watercolor dries lighter after you've applied it on the paper, frustratingly. And night scenes are all about those contrasts, the darkness against the light. So I always make sure I've got plenty of pigment, plenty of paint on my palette, mix plenty of paint, try and use rich colors as well. You'll see me using my neutral tint and deep reds and deep blues to try and get the effect of the darkness. And you'll probably need a little bit more paint than you think, as wheat washes just really, unless you apply loads and loads of wheat washes on top of each other, a little bit painstakingly slow. You won't get that kind of punchy atmospheric effect that we're after. Another thing to watch out for is color temperature. Can I show you? So we've got some warms down here, some yellows. But up the top, I think there's a bit of coolness up there, or around the light as well in the background building. So we've got to be a little bit careful with that. As regards my composition, I quite like the composition I've got already in my photo, with the light there on that left-hand side. That's the kind of dominant light source. And then we've got these domes coming towards us and over to the right side. I think they're quite attractive as well. This sort of, in the middle of this square, there's a bit of a sort of bit of vegetation with these clipped shrubs. Quite attractive. And certainly they're being emphasized with that nighttime glow, with the light on top of them. The light there is throwing a nice shadow across this way as well, fanning around. Watch the edge there, soft edge, and a little bit of lightness as well. Here we've got the light of the cafe, little bits of sort of geometric shapes of light. There's the windows that are emitting light as well. We've got two up there. We've got two or three down here on the right-hand side. Some of the smaller lights, I don't think I'll bother with that one there. It's right against the tree. Yeah, we've got a bit of contrast there, that hard edge, but it doesn't do it for me. I'm going to stick with that main light source there. We've got the light hitting the railing as well. I fancy putting a figure in as well. Rather than those stacked chairs there, I will opt for try and do my best with having a figure. And I always like connecting a figure to shadows and having a darker figure against a lighter background. So we've got sort of a little bit of lightness in the background there where that doorway is, but imagine a figure here emerging from the shadows, something like that. Excuse my crude drawing, but imagine a figure in there coming out from the shadows, either coming towards us, not sure, or going away. A little bit of light here on the side of the tree trunk. Also the tree, this photo was taken in winter, and the tree canopy, the branches, the twigs are just coming down here. We'll need a little rigger brush for those thin twigs, but also above the light source, look, we've got some light branches just catching the light. Just another extra effect, a little bit of interest. Really dark sky, soft edge-ish against the buildings. Quite dark up here. This is one of, over on the left-hand side, we've got one of these iconic timber-clad buildings here with the old timbers against the wall, very attractive. Nice sort of pattern of these timbers against it. What looks like some kind of a reinforcing wall there, but creating a bit of shadow with the light on the right, creating a bit of shadow on that left-hand side. The old cobbled streets as well. So that's what we're going to be painting. Love you to have a go. Certainly those of you on Patreon, have a go and share it with the rest of the community on Patreon. We'd all love to see your efforts and put in our comments as well as regards how you got on. I'm going to go through this demo as per normal, step by step, going through the materials and the various stages of the painting process, doing the outline drawing, getting in the main shapes, getting the perspective right, a little bit of perspective, forgot to mention that, perspective of the buildings, that angle there, that angle there. We're going downhill just a little bit, and then I've got a bit of perspective here with the layout of these little cobblestones, these flat cobblestones there, bit of perspective there as well with the railing coming towards us. Yeah, so talking through the very important drawing, getting the main shapes right, and then into painting proper, doing the initial wash, but then, as I said, just applying colours, deep, rich, dark colours, one on top of the other, doing a lot of wet in wet with this one, and a lot of it waiting for actually painting while the paper's still damp. But at various stages, I'm going to have to let the paper dry to get those harder edges again. More on that as we go through. So let's get to it. Materials first of all then, I'm using Saunders Waterford cold press paper, NOT, and it's 15 inches by 11 inches. Taped down, as you can see, the palette on the right, normal palette of colours. Colours are from Mark Chapman in the UK. Links to that in the description if you're interested. And normal colours. I'll go through my palette when I get to the painting stage, but this drawing stage first of all. So I got in the top level of the buildings and then that tree trunk. And now those round shapes of those bushes. I'll probably not spend an awful lot of time doing this drawing and trying to keep it fairly loose, just those main outlines of shapes. I don't often draw in the edges of shadows, but I think the shadow of that bush, it just warranted just to make sure I've made a mental note to myself to put that in there. With that left-hand vertical line, need to make sure that is pretty much parallel to the left-hand side of the paper, just to help with the angle of those buildings so it doesn't look as if they're sloping inwards awkwardly. Some simple shapes for windows, some of which I'll need to paint around to leave the white of the paper, or certainly keep them light. Here's the road going downhill a little bit, downhill from left to right, and my figure emerging from the shadows. Not sure at this stage whether this person is coming or going, but the important thing is getting the scale right of the figure. And in proportion as well. So trying to make sure that the head is in the right size compared to the body, and then the connection with that shadow as well. A little bit more emphasis of those round bushes. Now on the right hand side we've got the end of this row of buildings, and then it gets lighter on the right hand side. Just strengthen up that tree trunk a bit. A bush here coming towards us or closer towards us. Small round bush. This is the important one here. Now that pencil line, I need to make sure I paint over that pencil line so that I've got the light of the top of the bush without any offending marks of the pencil. There's a little restaurant or something down here on the right hand side, just a little depiction of the top blinds there, and a little bit of the window frames as well. Now you see me on my palette, I had a couple of sponges there. Now the reason for those is that this palette it's got a lid. You can see the hinges down the right hand side, so the lid closes. And putting those damp sponges in there keeps my tube paint nice and fresh. I know a lot of people, especially beginners, they may have hard pans, the small little pans, and they find that useful to start with. But really the better quality paint is out of the tube. And people might shy away from that because they think, well, the tube paint is going to dry up too quickly. Well, it doesn't if you make sure it's kept moist with a lid, and that dampness helps a little bit as well. Right, I'm now pre-wetting the whole scene with a sponge, of course. Other materials would do, a flat brush, spraying maybe. So wetting the whole paper evenly, not really wet. It's just letting the water soak in. So good quality 100% cotton based paper like Saunders is quite absorbent and quite a tough surface as well. Takes a lot of abuse. But I want to make sure this water is well and truly soaked in evenly across the scene. And I'm left with just a little bit of dampness in the paper, which is going to give me those soft edges, which I need to be very vigilant, very careful about with the main lamp there, just left of the middle of the scene. Right, the brush I'm going to be using for most of the painting is a Tintoretto mop brush, series 1407, size 6. Good brush, good point, good edge to it as well, holds a lot of water. The paints, the colours I'm using, as I say from Mark Jackman, neutral from the top, neutral tint, burnt umber, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, spring green, viridian green, cobalt green, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, cadmium red, light red, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow down the bottom there, and then across the bottom to the right we've got lavender, and then there's a light yellow gouache and a white gouache. Surface is then damp. You can see the shine on the surface against my lights, and I'm starting by applying an initial wash into this damp paper. Various colours, trying to introduce lots of interesting colours, but thinking about the play of those warms and cools. Over on the left-hand side, I see a lot of warmth in that timber building, and then in the middle, a little bit cooler, I'm using a lavender to create that coolness. There's a little bit of blue in the two windows of that building, so I've just put in the base colour of those. That will dry lighter. Now, coming down to the building on the right-hand side, I need to be careful again to preserve the paper, painting around those two brightly lit windows above the restaurant. Be careful as I come down to the ground level to again preserve the paper, the light of the paper for the two, well, the restaurant and the shop. I'm not sure what the one is just immediately to the right. There's the warmth of that wall on the right hand side. It may be just a little bit too light. I want to make sure that the shrubs are a little bit darker than that brightly lit wall on the white. So yeah, got to be careful, got to think about the values there on that right hand side. Constantly mixing up different colours. There's a little bit of an initial wash in the sky, but more on that later on. I need to get in the base, these base colours, an initial wash, just really covering most of the paper except for those areas that are going to be very bright or those areas that I want to handle in a particular way. I'm going over the figure. That's important because that figure is going to be dark, all right? So I can go over that figure and hopefully where I'm painting over the figure, that will be kept light so that I'll still be able to see the outline of the figure when I come to do it. In the bottom left-hand corner, it does look quite warm, quite sort of brown, the surface there. So I'll keep that with a sort of, I'll create that with that burnt sienna. I think that will work with the lighter areas. Again, I'll need to go dark in the bottom, the extreme bottom left-hand corner, where it is a little bit further away from the light. Little bit of base green for the shrubs in that little park area, that little greenery area. And the shrubs are a little bit warmer on the right hand side, so I added a bit of cadmium orange down in there, where you can see that the paper surface is well and truly wet now, and also the paper is buckling a little bit. We've got some peaks and troughs. I don't mind that, to be honest with you. It will flatten out as it dries. It will flatten out perfectly well as long as you've got it securely held with with tape or something similar. A little bit darker now around the light, just being very careful to preserve that, almost a circle of light. Painted around the top of the bush, going over my pencil lines where I had the outline of that main bush just in front of the light. These are the first real sort of darks now. I picked up neutral tint to go quite darker. Notice my brush marks. I'm just fairly lightly touching the surface, not applying the paint with any force, just lightly touching the surface, and applying it into a damp surface, we're getting these soft edges. As I'm continuing, I'm using less water to paint ratio. So we're going thicker, okay? A little bit darker now on the restaurant building, preserving, retaining those two upper windows. Carefully going down to the top of the building, the top of the blinds there. Little indication where the tree trunk is coming down just on the other side of the greenery. Now a little bit more of this sky. Let's start with the sky. and starting with that top right corner, it's best to make sure that your buildings, so with the wash of the buildings, I went into the sky a little bit, but let it dry because we do want a softish edge up there, but not ultra hard, not ultra soft. So just let it dry a little bit. It's running perhaps a bit too much on the right hand side. You see it's almost coming into the restaurant building, which doesn't matter too much because the top of that building is going to be quite dark. These buildings, they're fairly light at the bottom, but then as we go to the top, particularly above the level of the street lamp, they are going a lot darker. So I'm just thinking now what to do next. And it's just going to be adding a little bit more primarily into the buildings. Just gradually going darker and darker, keeping an eye on the paper as well, making sure it's still quite damp. So I keep getting those soft edges. Now I've got a little bit there's two little light patches at the top. That would be a good time to think, what could you do with those? You could almost make them into extra little bits of street light, but I'm going to go over both of those. A little bit more down above the restaurant. That might have dried just a little bit more, so I can go carefully up to the top of the restaurant roof. And I want to, with the sky, I want to, as much as possible, prevent the showing of too many brush marks. So I've got to keep working on it, but not applying too many layers. If I apply too many dark layers to that sky, it will end up a little bit overworked, and potentially those brush marks they're going to show. Some initial marks for the ground floor of the shop. I'll call it a shop in the middle, and the restaurant on the right hand side. You can see with my brush I've got a wide variety of brush marks I can make. Big marks with the brush as I'm using it now, but then with the point, nice thin lines, and flat edge, using the flat edge, some nice edges. I'm mixing my darks in the top of my palette, so I've got three main mixing areas, and generally speaking I've got one area for cools, one area for warms, and then the darks in the top there. I see a little bit of greenery I'm not sure where it's reflection from the shrubs, but a bit of green over on the left hand side in the sort of warmer part of the wall. A lot of the buildings in Bergerac, they've got a very distinctive warm colour to them, and they tend to show up a lot more at night than in the bright sunlight of day. Now the white around the light, you can see there's a few hard edges appearing there. It doesn't matter so much. With a little bit of careful use of a damp brush, we can tease that outline and get a soft edge again. Burnt sienna, warm up that left hand side. I'll probably have to do this again, an initial go at trying to get in the lines of those cobbles just to the left of the green shrubs. Still quite still quite damp in places, particularly in the troughs. I can introduce a little bit more darkness now into the top left corner of the building, the middle building. Go darker with those shrubs on the right. Using quite a lot of spring green for those shrubs, especially the tops of those shrubs. Now this main shrub just in front of the light, using the tip of the brush, I'm just gently touching the surface just to create the impression of the top of the shrub, and also I just where the paint was wet across the top, I just teased it a little bit, just brought it down in a few places, just where there could be some lighter leaves above the main shape of the shrub, just catching a bit of light. Bit more darkness, continually applying more darkness to the top of the middle building, and because of the dampness of the paper, I've gone a little bit too dark over those two light blue lit windows. So I'm just lifting off with a paper tissue. It doesn't matter about the shape of those windows at the moment because they've got some dark frames around them. So I can sort of mask any imperfections of that lifting out by going over with the frames of those windows. The sky is still quite damp, so I can apply another layer, and with the brush, which is it's a good soft brush, so it's not disturbing the surface too much of what I'm painting over. Now over to the right, and then the building on the right just kind of slopes over a little bit. A few lines just to show something going on, just to break that up a little bit. And it's gradually taking shape. We're gradually getting now the light showing against those darks. Burnt umber, alizarin crimson, neutral tint, bit more darkness over on the left-hand side. And it will dry, I can assure you, a lot lighter than this. Again, a second go at these lines. May not have them 100% right. And I will go over with a little bit of thinner dark lines just to create a bit more of the appearance of those paving stones. So that's it pretty much for the initial wash stage. I'm going to have to dry it now before we go to the next stage of applying on some harder edges. So just a bit of final painting there. And I normally use a hairdryer to speed things up, so we'll fast forward to that. Paper now dry. You can see it has lined up a little bit. Some of the darker areas have gone a little bit lighter. Now, same brush, I'm creating some of the architectural details, the timber framing of that lovely old building on the left, and the windows and all sorts of little just the details just to make them a little bit more building-like. So I'm using this mop brush. I'm not sure at the moment whether it's a little bit too thick. It's a bit difficult to apply some nice lines for those timbers that are at different angles on that wall. Anyway, once it's done, they may, I'm not sure at this stage if they're going to appear in the finished painting. Probably I don't want them to show up too much because the main focal point will be the figure, the light hitting the tops of the shrubs. So just the impression of those timber buildings. A few dry brush marks for the road going down to the right. And these windows, the shutters are shut. The colour of these shutters, you seem to, in this part of France, you seem to just get a fairly narrow range of colours, browns, reds, greens, maybe blue. These are, to me, they look like a sort of brownish colour. So I'm going in with a burnt sienna here. Not, as you can see, it's not a perfect rectangle. And sometimes loose is best. Not having it look, in my mind, not having it look too perfect. A similar colour for the windows just to the top left of the light. And they probably won't, well, they won't show up as much as the first ones I painted. The ones in the top left there, they're in a darker part of the building, up there in the top left. Yes, I've changed. I'm going to change my brush now to a smaller brush for better control. It's easier to create smaller marks and more precise marks with a smaller brush. This is a synthetic round brush, and many manufacturers create these sorts of brushes. This is from Jackson's in the UK. Skoda do them. All the main brands do a similar brush. It's probably about 4 or 5 millimeters in width, the brush. Just using quite a few dry brush marks. There's not a lot of water on the paint. You can see with the slope of my palette, I'm just picking up a bit of water in that bottom mixing well. That's just enough. There are some lines going across the top of the building, which I'll apply a lighter line below that where the light is shining up. There's those darker frames of the windows in the middle and a middle frame, couple of horizontal frames, a downpipe or something going on. Now a first floor shutters for the middle building. Again, it's not going to show up too much against the darker wall. Lines going across, skip over the light, the lamp. A doorway of the middle building that comes down and it just sort of touches or connects with the round bush below the light. A few lines on the left-hand side. You can see some covers or lines between the bricks. Just to emphasize a few of those. Now I've using the same brush, I've rinsed it thoroughly, and with some clear water now, just trying to get in a soft edge for that light. Trying to make it, I reckon, trying to make it as circular as possible. The lights in the square, I don't think they're antique. They're quite nice sort of modern versions of a antique lamp, but to me they're quite circular. So I want a soft edge, use my finger just to gently lift off and merge in the paint to get that soft edge around that and around that source. Of course, the other way of creating or preserving the light of the paper is by using masking fluid, which I've never really got on with. Or you could put a bit of masking tape over that area, cut out a bit of circular tape and some rectangular shapes for the windows if you didn't want to use masking fluid. Bit more colour now on top, quite thick, not too much water. A bit more colour, green colour, cadmium orange to those shrubs. And I used a 1/2" brush for that, just to let you know. 1/2" brush, again, synthetic brush. Back to my main shrub, I'll call it my main shrub in the middle, and the leaves are a little bit darker, going down to the base, frigid green, spring green. A little bit darker towards the bottom of that shrub. Just a few, one or two darker ones in the very top of the bush as well. We're now creating the shape, we're beginning to create the shape of this bush and the other bushes by the edge of the dark shadows. They are creating the shape of the lighter bush next to it. This bush is not too dense. We can see through it, so I'm not, with my little dabbing technique here, I'm just leaving a little bit of light showing through here and there. Darker, a little bit darker towards the bottom. It's just tucked inside the corner wall, quite a low wall, and then we've got the railing coming down to that bottom right-hand corner. Shadow coming out from the bush, which I've kept warm, burnt sienna here. And this shadow has got a harder edge just where I am now. It's got a bit of a harder edge there. I'm going to have the figure sinking into it, but a hard edge there, and then a softer edge down on the other side of the shadow. Right, figure, starting with the head, I can just about see my pencil outline still of the figure. And with a smaller brush, fairly thick paint, it's glistening a little bit against my studio lights, but that will show up a bit more as it dries. And then down to the legs. Get one leg in first, and then think, where's the other leg going to be to make it look natural? Connect with the background lines as well. Bit more colour in the shadows. Strengthen up the other side of the wall. just need to go a little bit darker above the bush. So I need to be careful here because the surface of the building behind is dry, and I'm using a flat brush here, not much water, but almost dry brush, to just gently go around that with that darker value. And hopefully as it dries, hopefully that will give us a little bit more of a contrast than we had before, of the light of the bush against a darker background. Now with this flat brush, I'm creating now the shapes of those clipped bushes, and I find this is quite effective to create the feeling of a hard edge and a soft edge. So I'm just gently starting with the harder edge and then sort of flicking up to create the softer edge, and the illusion, hopefully now as we go over, the illusion of those different shapes all connected with each other. So there's a roundish one here. Just create a bit of shadow on the right hand side, and then a hard edge where the light, keep thinking about where the light's coming from. As we come over to the right, yes, we're going darker, but the edges are softer. So darker, and softer. Just below the shrubs is the little low retaining wall, and the railings sat on top of that. And then below the shrubs, we've got the soil, the ground. Little here and there we can see just a little bit of light catching that ground, just between the shrubs, a few gaps. With my flat brush, I can just soften up, well, with the fingers as well, just soften up that edge of the shadow. It's still damp. Burnt umber, neutral tint, going a little bit darker. You can see that wall is still a little bit damp. And then very gently creating a bit more definition to that shrub. Being careful not to close up all those light areas that I've got between the different leaves of the shrub. Right, lavender for a bit more definition to the middle cafe restaurant. I'll have to look it up afterwards what it was, but the restaurant on the right hand side, not sure what it's called, Restaurant Le Richelieu, something like that. Yeah, so a little bit of definition to the signage, the sign above the ground level. Tree trunk now, and I'm not sure if I put it in the right place because I've got it going up right where one building joins the next, sort of down there, but I think it's all right. And then it forks just below the top of the building, and then we get lots of thinner branches coming out. Now, this may not be the best brush for this. it does have a good point, but I need to go down a size in brushes to do the twigs and thinner branches, and also trying to make those twigs and branches natural looking, not too evenly spaced. They're going in different directions. They cross each other as well. There's another tree just here, but I'll not put that in. I think it'd just be too much going on that right-hand side, but just the indication of a few lines down there to show that there's something going on. There's a tiny little rail just beyond where the shrubs are. Bit of lavender for the brickwork that's going up that kind of strengthening part on the right-hand side of the timber building. Not sure what it is. Thought it might be a chimney flue or chimney, but maybe not. It's too thin for that. Maybe it's just there to strengthen that building. Keep working at these edges for the shrubs, and with the, should have said, with the darker shadow that I've got between them, that's, well, a little bit of viridian, neutral tint, of course, but introduce some other colours in there. I'm just connecting the shadow to the tree, which I think is important. Well, it's important to connect it, but also that's where the light is on the left. It's creating a shadow going over to the right. More shadow on the right-hand side. Brush, my little flat brush, going in different directions, going over the edges of the paper as well, so I don't have a gap there. Right, a few more lines for the pavement stones. A bit more darkness on the very left-hand side, and a bit more darkness, softness in this top left corner as well. Some of those windows, they're still a little bit damp. I'm going to now use a rigger brush. This is a Lebanson brush, handmade brush, and it's got a very fine point to it. Long hairs, so it does hold quite a bit of paint, but I find this is ideal for painting, creating very thin twigs, very thin lines as well, if you're doing railings or lines, power lines, ropes. If I was doing a harbour scene, twigs here. Great for doing this, and it just holds, as I say, holds a lot of paint as well. Again, description in the notes of the video if you're interested in that. Right, these windows on the right, a little bit narrower than the building in the middle, just a little bit narrower. And now a little bit of definition to the top of the lamp and it does go a little bit lighter, the top of that light, a little bit lighter towards the light source. It's got these three kind of arms to it that's supporting the top, and I'll just see if this works, just painting in the darkness that we see behind. It may or may not work. Might look a little bit better when I get in the main post here, down to the top of the bush, so it just sort of disappears behind that bush. Might need a bit of softening up around those two darker marks around the light source, just to make it more convincing as a light source. While I've got my small synthetic brush, I can just add a little bit more to the texture of these shrubs, just little areas of darkness here and there. Just go a bit more circular on the light. And get these railings in now. I hadn't drawn those in, so I need to be a bit careful. If you want to make sure the perspective looks good, make sure you get that in at the drawing stage. However, because I've gone quite dark there, it might be difficult to see your pencil line. So just maybe get an initial line, a light line, just to make sure it looks okay. And those two, the top of the railings and the bottom of the railings, they sort of go a little bit wider towards that bottom right-hand corner. I'll get some highlights later on top of the railings. Just strengthen up the little retaining wall at the bottom of the railing, and a few lines here for the cobbles. One way and then the other way. Few lines in the street. Just helps a little bit to create a bit of definition. Not too many though, just right underneath that lamp. I want to try and keep that area quite light. But we might see a few more lines further away. A few more lines down here. Coming towards us, a few within the shadow as well. Yeah, I don't want to put a dark line there, so I spotted my little error, and I hopefully try and mop it up a little bit. But I haven't, it's not too dark, so it should be all right. Now for some lighter highlights, which I use this white gouache and quite often add another colour to it, in this case lavender. So the top of the middle building has got this big, from our light, the light shining up, there's a little bit of architectural detail at the top of the roof, bit of a protrusion, and we've got some light catching the bottom of that So it just makes them a little bit more three-dimensional. Another one here, just above the ground level. So it's synthetic brush here. Now, of course, with my figure, that makes that figure just pop a little bit, having the light on top of the head and a little bit of light on the shoulder as well. More light on the right-hand side because that's where the lamp, the light source is coming from, of course. Light on the top of the railings, a little bit brighter towards the lamp, but then becoming less strong away down to that bottom right corner. Next, a little bit more light on those twigs, especially above the light, just a little bit. Back to my Lebanson rigger brush and try and get, with the white gouache, it's important to get the right consistency of water to paint. If it's too thick, then you get dry brush marks. If it's too thin, then the gouache dries a little bit darker and it goes a sort of milky colour. So nice, natural looking squiggly lines there where those branches are catching the light. While I've got this brush, I can just define a few little extra lighter areas, highlights to that main bush below the light. And perhaps a bit on the other side of the street, just where the bottom of the building is catching the light. Bit of highlight on the left-hand side of the tree trunk. Be careful not to put in too much, but also make sure that highlight is right on the edge of the trunk. A few more bits to the railing, that lower bit. Of course, not on the left-hand side, but that's still in the shadow a bit, still in the shade a bit. Strengthen up that right-hand side of the figure. Not too much with the nose. Bit of writing on the middle building, bit of writing for the restaurant. If you have a go, you could probably put in some French sounding signage there if you want to. A few extra twigs catching the light. And the all-important little dark slats for the shutters. Just makes them a little bit more shutter-like. There, just a few. Strengthen up this doorway as well. And also some of the stonework on that left-hand side. The stonework going up that middle building as well. cadmium orange for some of the frames of the restaurant, bushes on the right hand side of this figure, perhaps just a bit of flesh colour to make that figure stand out a bit more. So I think I'm nearly there. At this stage, I'm just really thinking about does it need any extra details? Perhaps a few more lights at the top there. I need to be careful with the lights though up the top, not going too strong with that light colour. Yep, so I think the top light squiggles are a little bit too bright, so I'll just need to get them a little bit softer. Figure, face, yeah, just soften out that face a little bit. With a tissue, just lift off. It's still a little bit damp. A damp tissue, just lift off those top areas. And what I'll do now is when I'm done, I'll go through a little bit of a critique of myself just to see how things went. Nighttime scene then in the old part of Bergerac, and a lovely little square with the old buildings around it and the medieval building in the top left corner, but trying to get the feeling of light and the darker contrasts and the shadows as well, interesting shadows. I think the painting went okay. I quite like the way the bushes came out, placement of the figure, the value of the background buildings, the sky as well. My brush marks didn't show up there. There's quite a nice sort of even application of brush marks up there. Nice soft edges down the right-hand side. Perhaps that glow down there on the right could have been a little bit brighter. The lamp as well, I could have got a little bit more of a softer edge. I'm trying to think now, a softer edge. Well, that mark's a bit unfortunate now that I look at it. But maybe that edge there could be a bit softer, and that could be a bit softer as well. And that line there could be softer also. Trying to get that nice sort of circular, excuse my drawing, you get the idea. Trying to get a circular look to that light. Also the little squiggles of light, maybe they could have been a bit warmer. I could have mixed a bit of white gouache with yellow ochre or even an orange, just to create a little bit of a different light to that. But I quite like those expressive lines up there. Figure came out okay. Also, the perspective I think was all right. Maybe could have come out. Could I have made the perspective a little bit better of the wall there? So we got the top of the wall coming down like that. Maybe it could have come down a little bit wider, tiny bit wider. Yep, so I hope you have a go. Those of you on Patreon, have a go, and we'd love to see your efforts as well and comment about those. But thanks for watching. Looking forward to your comments as well. Pop into comments And if you're on YouTube, please like this video, and I will catch up with you soon on the next one. Cheers for now. Bye-bye.